All right, welcome everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Can I please, board members present, Steve Brown, Ted Gergen, Nicole Haas, Jack Nikolai, and Nick Poloni. Nobody's absent. Administration present, Vicky King, Marquez Guzman, Patty Fitzgerald, and Ben Holzum, right? Is that correct? Correct. All right, cool. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Yes. No Boy Scouts today, but
I know.
we're gonna have to do it on our own.
No. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We need to amend the agenda to add policy 8800, religious activities and observances, under action 9B, policy updates for the first reading.
You said
8800.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to amend the agenda?
I move that we amend the agenda as stated.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Passes. Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Jack?
He's got it.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, so we're going to take a look at the President's Report for June 2023. Just a reminder, prior to the July school board meeting, I know Vicki had sent some information about this, but prior to the board meeting, we're going to have a board workshop, right, with Shayna that's going to facilitate that conversation. And that conversation really, I think, obviously we're just wrapping up year one with Vicki. We have a strategic plan, there's construction happening, and it's really we have a new board member to allow us to learn together professionally, but also learn to work a little bit more collaboratively, to work more efficiently, to work more effectively. So what I'll be doing in the next couple weeks, I'll be working with Shayna to create that agenda and soliciting input of like, what are some of the topics that we really feel like we need to learn together as a board to move us like kind of into the next era, I would say.
What's the approximate starting time?
5:30, yeah.
Thank you.
What's the date?
The day of the July board meeting,
Is it 25th of July?
25th of July, yep. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
And that's one thing. So I'll be seeking some input regarding topics that we might want to discuss about that. Again, about like how we work more collaboratively together.
And we'll send a menu out, and so we'll make sure dinner's provided. So.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the second thing, and Vicki, I might call on you or Marquez to kind of talk through this a little bit. But I'm going to be trying to schedule a meeting with the village administrator, Mike Murdoch, just to build a stronger bridge of communication. It sounds like the first draft of some of the building sidewalks, crosswalk, safety berm that we had planned through the building design was denied by the village. So I think we would just want to try to mitigate any of that from happening and catching everybody off guard. So, you know, I'll again, when that happens, I'll send out information if anybody wants to join. That would be awesome. I don't know if you want to kind of talk through any of that, what that meeting was like today.
Yeah, we just had a brief meeting, just kind of, our plans are submitted, reviewed, and, I think we varied on certain aspects of it, but yeah, like you said, we would like to prevent, any surprises in the future. And
Right, because I think everybody probably thought it was like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
Like a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be great.
It's nothing, nothing major, but obviously, like differences in plans.
Right.
They had some questions. I see. Like, you got a question. Like they had questions about, like the crosswalks over at the 83 end and AH. That's where we had our berm planned, and we hadn't planned to have that to be a major place where we would be maintaining a sidewalk because we want kids to go to the other spot where we have a crossing guard and it's better sight lines. And that was just a conversation that was a non-starter for a while. And so we're trying to, for so long, I think one of the things that for us to understand that in the past that anyone could just walk on this campus to get from point A to point B, and having them understand that just having without there being a really clear line of where people are allowed to walk and not allowed to walk, it's a school premise and we can't just have the public walking through our campus. And I explained that our referendum dollars, a big portion of that went to safety. And so whatever we could do to make sure that we're not just letting, I understand in the past that it used to be in the past we did a lot of things differently in education, and things aren't as safe anymore. And so allowing just people to walk through without having some clear lines of this is where pedestrians can be. So,
Versus students.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They're building their subcommittee then? The meeting was, or was it the meeting of a whole, or just the planning commission for?
We met with the public works
He's the
director.
administrator, right?
Yeah, Mike wasn't at the meeting.
Not this one. He was at the previous one.
Oh, okay. But not the board, the administrator you were meeting with.
Well, we actually met with the Department of Public Works director, and then I think the property management,
And then they had the
and
consultant.
then they had a consultant as well. So
Yeah.
and I think they're going obviously through a lot of changes themselves. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah.
good to build those bridges and those relationships for sure. All right, we'll turn it over to Steve for clerk's report with any correspondence and a CISA 2 update.
Yes, I have no correspondence that I have. With regards to CISA 2, the main thing, we had our reorganization meeting of the Board of Control last Tuesday night. Marion Vinny was reelected as our board chair. I was reelected as vice chair, and there were 6 seats up for election. 3 or 4 were the normal 3-year term. The other 2 were terms where people had resigned previously. So I think one was a 2-year term remaining, the other was 1 year. And so all but one of those seats was voted upon. And we do it within the regions, or the clusters, I should say. So our cluster is one of the largest ones. I think it's Cluster J, with set all the schools that feed into Central, into Wilmot, into Lake Geneva, into Beloit, into Janesville. I mean, it's a huge area. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take a look at this consent agenda. Nicole, we'll take a look at the treasurer's report?
Yeah, sure. All right. I'd like to present the treasurer's report dated May 2023. I'll read the ending balance for each of our accounts. Please note that the credit cards and capital improvement fund accounts at Community State Bank have been consolidated into existing accounts at Community State Bank and WISC respectively. General fund cash account with a balance of $390,853. Credit cards account with a balance of 0. CSB Flex account with a balance of $20,066.13. Capital Improvement Fund, Fund 46 with a balance of 0. Petty cash with a balance of 300. LGIP with a balance of $2,228,754.86. WISC with a balance of $22,373,337.35 for a grand cash and investment asset total of $25,013,311.34. Payment of accounts payable bills. I'd like to present the payment of account payable bills dated May 1st to May 31st, 2023. This includes paper checks numbered 71835 to 71903, wire transfer checks numbered 20220137 through 2022011568, and ACH checks number 222300088 to 223300103 for a total of $939,519.38.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of numbers. I did want to mention, going back to the treasurer's report, that we did consolidate those two bank accounts. So in the past, we had 4 community state bank accounts, and when I first got here, that's the way it was set up. We've since instituted our P card, our purchasing card for credit cards, and so that runs through our general operating account anyway. So we weren't really using that credit card account. And then we transferred the vast majority of the Fund 46 balance to that WISC account because it was earning close to 5%, versus community state was only at like 1%. And so from my view, I just was trying to consolidate, simplify this treasurer's report so there'll be less accounts to read off in future months. And then from my end, just simplifies the bank reconciliation process. So just wanted to.
Why couldn't we have done this like 6 months ago, Marcus?
We could have. Yeah, it would have been easier for you. Sorry.
I see.
I just want to go over the monthly revenue and expense report. So this is through the month of May. We're almost at the end of the fiscal year. We're a few days away. So I've already kind of run the numbers for June, and that'll come up later as we look at the budget amendments. So I don't want to put too much focus on this May report because the percents still seem really low for the fiscal year. The bulk of our expenses, or a good chunk of them, come through in June, and also on the revenue side as well. I just want to highlight on the revenue side, the revenue limit sources, so those are property taxes, state aid, and state tax exempt aid, are all kind of on pace with last year, 68.71% received through May 31st. And then on the rest of the revenue is a little bit behind pace from the previous year, and that's mostly due on the federal revenue sources. I was holding back on ESSER claims and some special ed claims just until I knew what was going on with the state budget, in case we needed to balance the budget for next year using that. We'll talk more about that, but fortunately things are looking good for us. So that's the revenue side of things. And then on the expense side, expenses are up year to date. You can see salary and benefits are relatively on pace with last year. The big thing is the purchase services. We bought a lot of software. We had air handling units put in. Those things still continue to make that percent larger year to date. Additionally, the interfund transfer amount is a lot smaller, and also the total budget is smaller. So as a percent of expenses, it makes it look like we've spent a higher percentage compared to last year. That'll get evened out as we get into June then. But like I said, I don't want to put too much stock in this. We'll talk about the budget amendments later on, and also next year's budget. But if anybody has any questions on revenue and expenses through May, I'd be glad to answer any of them.
I think you'll get into more
Yeah,
detail,
yeah.
right? Yep.
Got, I think, 7 items tonight, financials.
Yep. And attached to the board agenda, you'll see the minutes of the special school board meeting dated May 23rd, 2023, as well as the minutes of the regular school board meeting of May 23rd, 2023 as well. Can I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through E as presented?
I move to approve the consent agenda items A through E as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
So I just split up the consent agenda based upon our conversation. Okay. So to give conversation around the resignation of Aaron Perry, this was a student support position that when we did our reorganization in February or March, this position, we collapsed it because we were looking to have 2 assistant principals versus just student support coaches. So it would help with a variety of things that come along with someone with a admin certification. Erin Perry was our deaf and hard of hearing person, but she's going to CISA, so we'll be able to contract and continue to work with her. And her services are going to be used in surrounding districts as deaf and hard of hearing. So we're excited for her that we can continue to have her working with our students because she is a special person, special teacher to have with our kids. And then we're hiring the intermediate teacher, Nancy Reese Brown. We have these next two teachers. One is a short-term contract, or the limited term contract, because we want this person to make sure that they've kind of finished with their certification. And so that's why that contract looks different. But these are filling positions that one of them was vacated through Allie becoming an assistant principal. And then the other one was a teacher who we did not renew the contract when we did our teacher renewals last year.
Any questions at all? I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda items F through G as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda items F through G as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Any public comments? No? All right. Okay, let's take a look at some action agenda items.
Okay, so just like we did last year, we need to approve the board calendar for this upcoming year. There are two, per policy, it is the fourth Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m., but we've got two of those that are going to be falling during breaks, and so we're recommending, but you can make it a decision otherwise, for December 19th instead of the 26th, and then the March 19th instead of the 26th.
Is this pretty similar to what was communicated as like potential? All right. Any questions at all?
It's reasonable.
Preferences of December 26th with the 19th? Yeah?
19th.
19th?
It's fine with me.
And what about spring break? March 19th as well? Versus over spring break?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Can I have a motion to approve the 2023-24 board calendar as presented and discussed? Again, moving the December 26th date to December 19th and the March 26th date to March 19th.
I move to approve the 2023-2024 board calendar as presented, with the December meeting being December 19th and the March meeting being March 19th as presented and discussed.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries?
Since we've never gone through the board calendar.
Oh,
What's
really?
that?
Usually this takes discussion for this one, but.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's quick.
It works with your CISA. This works pretty well with CISA, right? I know sometimes there's conflict with the CISA calendar.
Yeah, the CISA Board of Control meetings are the third Tuesdays. So.
So it was when we moved, like, it was Thanksgiving and then it was winter break and
Right.
spring, there were a bunch.
Right, and so I attend our meetings
Yeah.
and not the CISA meetings when
okay.
there's a
Alright.
conflict.
I think just the calendar lines up a little bit better this year.
Yeah, must.
And last year, we also had teacher conference.
It's all over the place. It's been all over the place.
All right.
Okay, so we have our policy updates. It's the first reading. We had our committee meeting this morning, and we finished this afternoon. Just as a reminder, this is the key and references for how they are organized. I've tried to start organizing them by groups, so it's clustering, with the exception of our 3,000 and 4,000. Some policies apply for both. Most of these policies we actually approved almost a year to the date, and I asked Neola and then Shayna why we have to do them again, and there are some statutory languages that we just need to update. And so if they sound like we just did that, it's because last year this time we did approve these, but there are some he's, she's that have gone to they and theirs that legally we would be in a problem later if we didn't make those changes. And then there is two policies that we want to have a discussion about. It will be a brief discussion, but one is we have a recommendation for some adjustments to the committee policy, and then the one related to social media, it's a new policy. So there's a little bit more conversation that we're going to need to have around that. All right, so 0100 is our legal notice under definitions. So legal notice in official newspapers, that was just added. And those are just how we make our postings. So those, we have new definitions. in your bylaws. And in the bylaws for 0155 committees, again, this is just a first reading, but one of the things that we've been looking at, or I've been looking at in other districts, I put in some board updates. We've looking at how it would align with our strategic plan. If we really did start to prioritize the way we look at safety with buildings and grounds, finance and personnel, I've sat in a handful of these meetings where we're repeating everything that we just repeated in personnel, we're repeating it in finance because you can't have one conversation without the other. And so combining those, because really those are the biggest two buckets on how we operate in a district. Negotiations would fall under that, but the difference between any community members, as our current board policy stands, we wouldn't allow board members to participate in negotiation meetings, but they are open to the board, obviously. And then technology, it has been a standalone committee, and we don't have any minutes to move over to provide for Nicole, because we haven't had that. It's been isolated, and I can see in the past why districts would have done that, but technology is so pervasive now. It's almost like you can have a conversation about curriculum without what type of technology goes with it, since many of our resources are digital. So moving technology into that education and curriculum review cycle seems to makes sense to me, and I'm just curious what the board says. And then maintaining our policy and community relations. Out of the conversation today, it came out that meetings like tonight, when we get 30 plus updates to policy, it could end up being a very long meeting for that committee if we started putting policy in one of the other ones. And then the other piece that I'd like to have the board consider, and we talked about today, was not requiring a set number of community members to be on the committee. Right now it says we need one, and we haven't had one on all of them. But if up to one may be on there, so not shall, the language is shall, if we switched it to may. So a community member may be on it, they would just need to go through the proper channel the way we do all the other ones. They would email board president, and the board president would bring that here to have them on the committees. But all of these minus negotiations would remain open to the community.
What about so you had mentioned how finance and personnel are kind of linked together. What about when there are conversations that take place in the finance committee that may impact negotiations? So it's not direct to negotiations, but there might be a conversation where we're talking about insurance rates, or and how that might influence what we may be considering other benefits.
And that still can happen in those finance and personnel. The only time, and because those are still allowed for community needs to be able to hear those.
Okay.
The only time you can go into closed is if you're talking about individual.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
All right, and then we discussed at the committee meeting today, the policy and community relations, that with regards to negotiations, that and I think you mentioned this already, Vicki, that a board member who is not on the finance and personnel committee could sit in on the meeting of negotiations, if you will, but only sit in to listen and not participate?
Yeah, other board, they would just be the ex officio.
Ex officio
Thank you.
member, right,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah,
Ex officio.
yeah. And I like that. And I think having board members attend other committee meetings that they may not be on, I think is a very good idea. Nicole was at the meeting today that we had, and it's just something that when we can fit it into our schedules, I know that's something that as board members, we try to do.
Sure. Yeah.
So my only recommendation to this is finance can literally be every single part of everything that's on that board. From buildings and grounds to how we prepare for education. So I just want to be cognitive of that too, because if you're the personnel and with negotiations, which can get very heavy during the later part of the year.
Sure.
And then finance, especially pre-post referendum, during building, the whole 9 yards, that can be pretty intense too. So I'm fine with it the way it is right now. I just want to we can change things if things get crazy too, to a certain degree. But I just want to kind of keep that in mind too, because I know in the past when we've done, the referendums, or we did the, building improvement project, the first round through and everything like that. I mean, finance was meeting, it felt like 3 times a week almost at one point too. So just kind of keeping that in the forefront too. So again, I'm fine with how this looks right now, but just kind of keeping that in the back of the mind.
And keep those, since this is just a first reading, that type of feedback is important so, yeah. Because we'll likely maybe at one point have to go back to referendum or whatever, so I don't want to assume something that I don't.
No,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. And then I do want to clarify, since this is first reading, any changes, we still go through second meeting. Perhaps if the board does accept this, like any of the changes that in any of these, but nothing would go into effect for like our current committees, like that restructure. There may need to be a restructure on who is where, because we've dissolved technology and things like that. So you may need to like send another email out
Awesome.
to people.
Yeah.
That'll be fun for you.
Right, and that's where we put our first and second choices, as we've done before.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so moving on to programs for our board update. So the curriculum development, the part that changed here, this was, again, one of those that have been there and we just updated. DPI added innovative instruction design language, which simply allows for personalized learning or virtual online learning methods. If districts were to accept this, the board would have to approve that type of digitized learning. I do know we have districts nearby that are starting to look at innovative instruction design in their continuum of care. And so I've shared that already with Patty and with Christy, just so they're aware that that's out. It is now language that DPI wants us to include. Special observance days, we've added September 11th and Arbor Day to make sure they're not holidays, but we are making sure we're recognizing those days for our students and they understand the significance of them. The district-sponsored clubs and activities, this 2430, it allows those clubs and activities to use our district logo if we're permitting those sponsored activities and clubs to do so. That language wasn't in there before, especially because we do have a new logo. It was recommended that we make sure that we have permission allowed to those clubs and activities. This is our professional and support staff, so 3215 and 4215, the use of tobacco and nicotine by professional and support staff. There's a similar policy for students, but it's worded slightly different. So this one is the addition for hemp derivatives and mood-altering substances was included in this. And so anything that's going to alter someone's mood is not allowed to be used by a professional or support staff. Now we're in our students section. So 5200, they've added the enforcement of truancy within our open enrollment process. This has been helpful already for us. We've done this, and now having this language and policy has been helpful. So what happens is sometimes students will they'll be truant in another district, and instead of getting that truancy paper, they'll bounce to try to go to another district, and they become a truancy problem in that district. Those data, if they're here doing testing sessions, count towards the school, and that's not good because they're in our school, but they're not they're not learning. And so this allows us to say, you can't come to you're truant, so your open enrollment is declined.
Could a student be denied enrollment under open enrollment if they have a track record, if you will, of being truant in their current district?
Yes. Currently, that's not a reason to deny open enrollment. So this gives us a more clause, so when they are with us, for us to do something. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
5300, the administration of medical care. This just includes language on where we're to store those medications. 5340, this has been revised and so that it actually allows a teacher or a coach to, if a student is exhibiting any type of head injury, that teacher or coach to be able to make the best call to such decision that student should be going outside or participating in the game if they're known to have had a concussion in the past, where that language wasn't in the previous policy. More students, here's that 5512. So this one, again, it's adding the hemp derivatives and any type of mood altering substances. The reason this was added really was because there was a student who was under the influence, not in our district, but in a district, and the student tried to claim that it helped calm their nerves, what they were taking from a vape. And for a while it was okay until they found that schools and policies and legislator caught up and said, we can't have that because there's a domino effect to that. 5512 or 5517 under student harassment, it just aligns with our current laws and regulations. This is where you'll see most of the theirs switches from he's and she's. In our conversation today, bullying came up. Bullying is under student anti-harassment, but we also have a bullying policy as well. So it's nested in both still. Search and seizure, this allows us to, if we have an idea of a student who's repeatedly bringing things they shouldn't be bringing to school, it allows us to frequently check, like every day you're going to have an inspection of your bag because we want to make sure that every day you don't have that on you, or you don't have your cell phone, you have it in your locker or whatever it is. So that is allowable. And then was also asked, have we had ever law enforcement, we've had instances where law enforcement have done that with an administrator, and in those cases, parents have to be notified of that first. When the law enforcement is there, not when they're not there. 7434, this is just, again, that the hemp derivatives and mood altering substances not to be anywhere on school property, because now we're under property. Facility security, I think this one I'm excited about. Not excited that I'm going to go do it tomorrow, but it's just nice to know that we have this language and permission that if we have reasonable concern that someone has something in their vehicle, that we're allowed to make sure that their vehicle, we can search those to make sure there's nothing unsafe on the premise. So that's property. Okay. This is one that's going to be a little bit longer of a conversation, and bear with me, I am going to read the language from Shana. So social media is a new policy, and it's going to impact how we're currently using our social media platforms. So I gave her, per the recommendation of Neola, we sent her the entire post for social media, and the recommendation is have your attorneys weigh in, and so this is her feedback. So if the district enables the technology so as to allow the public to comment on district social media posts, the district must be careful about deleting comments and blocking access to the page. Offering the public the opportunity to comment on the district's social media posts creates a limited public forum for purposes of the public's First Amendment rights. That said, the district can adopt rules governing the comments, but those rules must be reasonable and viewpoint neutral. And enforced consistently. For example, we could adopt rules such as you can disallow content that falls outside the protection of First Amendment, for example, true threats and obscenity. You can impose rules relating to the time, place, or manner of speech, which would include limiting the number of comments or the length of the comment that an individual can post. You can impose limitations on the topics that can be addressed in the comments, so long as the limitations are viewpoint neutral and reasonable in light of the purpose of the forum. And then finally, if you choose an option that limits the right of the district authorized personnel to reply, the limitations would only apply to those district employees whose job includes the responsibility of commenting on social media on behalf of the district, or whose comments are otherwise district sponsored. A staff member who is using social media site in his or her personal capacity would not lose the right to write way to go second grade if this option were selected. Rather, the language in option 2 is trying to communicate to the public that the district has no intention of engaging in the public concerning substantive matters online. So now I'm going to give you what those options are. So currently, as it stands right now, before I give you the options, we are not a limited public. It's a platform where it's unlimited, where Nicole Paul, she'll make posts and it's open so that anyone can respond to those, share those, add pictures and anything they want to them. The reason this has come up as a concern that we don't have policy language under it is because in the past, There were times when, it mostly happened during COVID, people said whether it was misinformation, disinformation, or just ugly language, those comments were hidden or deleted. And that's where we're being told, unless it's obscene or whatever, we're not allowed to do that. So Shayna's saying you could be infringing on First Amendment rights. There was an article that I shared with the committee today of a district that was sued for doing the same thing. So that's why it's important to have this. So option 1, district approved social media platforms. It serves as an interactive forums of communication. However, although the district-approved social media platforms are considered limited public forums, the district will not respond to or engage in dialogue about comments received. So it's allowing comments, but they're not going to respond to anything. Option 2, the district uses the approved social media platform as interactive forms of communication. It's still considered limited public forum, but district authorized personnel, which would be Nicole Paul in most cases, would be able to reply to comments asking direct questions with regard to dates, places, or times of district or building level events and/or programs, but will not respond or engage in dialogue about any other comments received. And then option 3, it has 3 options. The district uses approved social media platforms and sites as interactive forms of communication, and I know it's all it's on a Likert scale, accepts public comments, invites public comments, or welcomes public comments. And as such, the district will monitor post comments to verify they are on topic, consistent with the posted rules for the use of the forum, compliance with the platform's applicable terms of service. The board's review of posted comments will be conducted in a viewpoint neutral manner and consistent with the state and federal laws. Employees' personal posts on the public platforms are limited, restricted to matters of general public interest that are not related to the employee's specific employment and wholly unrelated to the employee's job responsibilities. Employees in administrative positions are ordinarily not permitted to post personal comments on matters of general public interest because to do so would be construed as board-sponsored speech.
So with regards to that one in particular we discussed today,
We talked about all these, but Shayna's comments is about number 2. We also talked about this and we just liked the committee liked how more encompassing it was.
yeah, I was just going to say that if a board member posted something, a board member is not an employee, but is a member of the community and an elected official.
Get paid by the district, so we're technically employees, I would say then, based off that, because we still get W-2s at the end of the year.
$100.
3, yeah. So we'd be considered employees, I think, at that level, because we receive compensation and a W-2. I mean, that would be my thought process on that, but.
And so to that, right now, Nicole Paul is really the only, anyone can comment, but she's the gatekeeper. And so she could allow more, right now it's anybody. And that's where we need to are we okay with everybody posting? And if so, then we need to make sure, because this is, her concern was if we automatically take it away and there's not this conversation first, people will feel like we all of a sudden hiding something.
I have a question. Looking, I guess, more for clarification. So in the meeting today, my interpretation was we were talking about whether or not to allow the public to comment on our posts. But then when I'm reading these options, like option 1 and option 2 aren't about the public commenting on our posts. It's about if the school responds.
It's a both and, because right now it's everything. So I have told our staff they're not to, for other people's posts, like the private Facebook, that used to happen where our people on our staff would go respond to posts that were made in the parent social media. Okay. So that's probably why we're seeing the blending of the conversation that Shayna is responding to. And that's where we've absolutely said, you're not okay to go post on theirs because that's not how we get questions answered.
I feel like just to maintain focus. Maybe we can separate them. So one would be how we want to manage the Salem School Facebook page, and then explicitly list like what we're concerned about, and then separate that from employees commenting on other. That makes sense?
So the employee thing would be like in the handbook then
Yep.
versus
Yep.
in board policy, which would be approved by the board. But
Yeah, which I like that idea better with it being in their handbook rather than in school policy. And otherwise, I really believe that broad language is generally better than specific language because broad covers more bases, right? So if we start really laying out specific examples, that lays us up to a situation that we didn't foresee happening in the future, right?
Sure, and I'm not talking about the language being used in the policy. I'm just talking about how we can think about it to come to a decision.
sure.
Just to make sure that we're all solving the same problem.
Sure, I get what you're
Instead
saying.
of you're interpreting it one way, Steve's
I was
interpreting
interpreting it
another
as in, like through our Facebook
Yes,
page,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Can we just turn off comments completely and just let it be notifications on what the school's doing?
We
Nicole
can,
has concerns about that, just because.
I think that one of the bigger questions is like, why do we use Instagram and social and Facebook, right? Like, why does the school do that? Like, I think that's where we need to start the conversation before we just.
To promote the things, the positive things that we're doing at the school, right?
Because I think too, in the meeting today, when she was giving us her perspective on how she's like generating likes and posts and hashtags, I did walk away like, well, I want to understand what the benefit of that really is, like what is the goal of the social media, to your point, so then that way we can narrow the focus to on this type of policy.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because I feel like the why we use social media is to engage the community, right? Like,
But I mean,
and so if we eliminate that interaction, then we're just then disseminating more information, right? Like there's no,
I mean, you can still like and share, right? I think it would just be,
you just can't comment.
can't comment. But yeah, I don't know.
well, perhaps we need to look at this policy a little bit more in the policy committee probably, and then come with some more recommendation, I would say, based on the things that are brought up. You know, I feel like we could sit on this one for an hour and go through this right
no,
here.
that's good, that's good. So
know.
this, when we, at the end, we won't, as a first reading, we'll just table this one
Correct.
and bring it back for, yep.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I like the idea of the management from the staff side being more in the handbook, the employee handbook, rather than board policy.
To separate those out.
Yeah, because we have, under policy, we have a policy to create a handbook, right? So, I mean, that's just a sub-chapter of that, I believe, in that case, so.
We're talking about commenting on a Facebook page, right?
Yeah, Facebook or Instagram, any of our
A lot
platforms.
of different media.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just held to that, it's also talking about other pages and such of that nature.
But we have another policy in our books already about commenting during parent comments, during comments here. There are some things they can say and there are some things they can't say. I mean, you can't attack a staff member as part of a comment during the board meeting. So I'm wondering how that would relate to our social interaction if someone came on and said such and such a teacher is blah, 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 blah. You know, does that get past the firewall? Does that get out to the point where others can read that and possibly be damaging because someone else's opinion says, well, they're not a good person? You know, how is this going to relate to something like that? Have we had that before where someone has come on?
Have had that. And so there is policy on staff harassment on, even in social media. So there, and I have written letters to families. I've had conversations like, that needs to stop, to cease and desist. You cannot be harassing and I found out it was on the private Facebook, like those groups. But because that they were naming teachers or giving so much information we could tell who it was, it became a harassing environment. So I pulled policy language and let them, that has to stop. So there is language around that, same way as there's so not, that's defamation of personnel, and we can protect against that. And then there's the harassment, we can protect students, so,
That's already there
Yeah.
under anti-harassment.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I recommend, let's just table this one
Okay.
for, until the second reading, and then
Yeah.
hopefully we have some more clarity.
And if we could get some clarification based on the comment that Nick made about, because I'm just looking at the Wisconsin State Legislature and some state statutes and also things from WASB, whether or not a school board member who is paid a stipend for attending board meetings, even though a board member is elected by the community, is viewed as an employee.
okay.
I mean, I just, because,
Clarification, right?
yeah, some clarification. Thank you.
To Ted's point, having the social media strategy, the end goal, but then if we could get the risks and rewards for
Okay.
each scenario, like.
Very good.
What's the risk, what's the benefit, and then we can at least see clearly.
Right, that helps
Helps make a
avoid those
decision.
like unintended,
Right.
like, oh, we made this decision and now we
Yeah.
can't allow this to like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and that might be something Shayna would want to speak, she probably could even speak to board members responding to social media. Because I wouldn't, some of this policy is very much preventative, and so I wouldn't know what she's trying to prevent from happening by us limiting, so, okay. Yep.
I thought free speech could be so complicated.
Media. Okay, we're actually, this is believe the last one, it is. All right, so finally for operations, are under environmental health and safety. So just making sure we have a environmental quality plan for our micro abatement phase out products. We currently have that. I know Steve Squires is, always reviewing those things. But that will be eventually attached to our strategic plan anyway, that type of quality plan. Casual control, communicable diseases, this has nothing to do with COVID, but this has to do with head lice and how we are now able to start to communicate and disseminate that information if we find that there's like a pocket of students in a classroom that have it. In the past, it was you weren't allowed to share that information, but now they're finding it as more preventative if we find out the student has it, to let the classroom know, so that's how parents can look for certain signs of head lice or whatever other that are casual contact diseases. Transportation, this is an important policy because this allows us to have language where you have got the video and audio surveillance on buses, and it actually comes up in a conversation we're having later tonight. But again, none of this stuff is public, it's all private, and so it's not people can live stream what's happening on buses, it's just strictly to make sure things are safer. 8800, this is the one that that why we had to make the amendment. I didn't put it in here, but we talked about it today. This is the idea of separating the language between religious activities and other observances, and this was based on a religious liberty case where someone was praying after, a coach was praying after a game. He got in trouble, and he shouldn't have, because he wasn't looking to try to get a group of prayer. He was just having a moment. So this separates what you're allowed and not allowed to kind of stop and kibosh. And then 8802, this is where this 8800 and 8802 used to be together. So moments of silence are different than doing his own individual prayer. He wasn't forcing other people to do this. But it does give us the opportunity, if something serious happens, we can hold moments of silence in school. On September 11th, if you wanted to hold a moment of silence, you could do that. If someone passes, that's important in the community, we could hold a moment of silence. And this is also where under this is our Pledge of Allegiance. So, and that is that.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the policies as presented and discussed, and we will table the social media policy?
Move to approve the first reading of the policies with the exception of policy 7544, which will be tabled as presented and discussed.
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right. From policy to budget, everybody's favorite topic. So this topic is the approval of changes to the 2022-2023 adopted budget. And it's in accordance with Wisconsin State Statute 65.90. So as you all remember, we approved a budget back in October. Obviously, since then, things change throughout the year. You know, we have staffing vacancies, revenue amounts come in slightly differently, other expenses come in different as well. So the purpose of this is to kind of update our budget from the one that was passed in October to where we're projecting things to end. So this is my best shot at it as of this point in time. And so the attachment that was in your board packet obviously goes into a lot more detail. I just want to cover the high level stuff, so I'll have a couple different slides with words and then with the numbers so people at home can follow along. But I'll jump right in. If you have any questions, just let me know. So on the revenue side of things, there was only a few. So I went through every single revenue and expense account through every fund for our district, and went and tweaked it depending on where things were looking. So on the revenue side, we did have some higher local revenue. Those are Source 200 level accounts, and that primarily is driven by interest. So back in October, I didn't really predict that we'd be at 5% interest rates, so I underestimated the revenue coming in off of interest. So this is updating that. And additionally, our fees came in. We had a little bit better collection of fees as well, so that contributed to that increase in local revenue. We additionally had higher open enrollment revenue, so that came in $42,000 higher than originally projected back in October. That means that we had additional students open enrolling. You'll see on the expense side, we actually had higher open enrolling expenses as well, so it kind of was a wash, but just want to go revenue versus expense. And then, as I've kind of mentioned a few times, on the federal revenue, the claims for our ESSER 3 grant and IDEA flow-through grant, which is a special ed grant, we did not claim as much as we had projected back in October. And I'll go into more detail on the expense side as well of why we did this. But then essentially those amounts roll over into future years, so that gives us more flexibility in next year, and we have some additional one-time costs built into next year as well, so that we're still not dealing with that fiscal cliff from ESSER. So the total of all the changes, and on the next slide you'll see it broken down similar to the way we do on the monthly revenue and expense reports. But the net revenue change was a reduction of $153,035. As I mentioned, most of that reduction can be received in future years through ESSER 3 and the flow-through grants. And then our Fund 10 budget is still projected to end this current fiscal year with a positive balance, and we'll move on to the expenses after I briefly show you the numbers here. So the top portion, those top three sources are revenue limits. So that was virtually, those are pretty exact numbers. There was a slight change there. But then all the other ones, I just highlighted anything that was over a $30,000 change. And like I said, the net change on the revenue side is a decrease of $153,000. Any questions on the expenses at this point, or revenues before we go into expense? Okay, so similarly, I want to highlight any significant expense changes on the Fund 10 budget. So we're only looking at Fund 10 mainly because the other funds were either very close or like our construction, we were a little behind on spending on the construction project, but that'll carry over into next year, so it doesn't really have any impact on the educational standpoint of the district. On the Fund 10 side, on expenses, we did have lower benefit costs. So back in October, we still didn't know what our insurance renewal was going to be at that point. When we budgeted, obviously our insurance renewal came in favorably. It was a 4% decrease for this plan year. I was budgeting, I think, like a 10% increase. So that we over budgeted on the benefit side of things. Open enrollment expenses were $60,000 more, and on the revenue side, you saw that those were higher as well. So those were kind of an offset. The expenses were slightly higher than the revenue, so actually it was a net loss of about $18,000. But then the two big ones are Fund 27 transfer is a lot lower than what we had projected. So most of our special ed funding is actually transferred from our Fund 10 general operations to special ed Fund 27. Because the state only covers about 30% of our special education costs, and then we also have some federal grant money coming in but then the school district's on the hook for the remainder portion. State aid actually increased for special ed. I think it ended up coming in about 31.5%, so it was higher than, I think I budgeted at 28% conservatively. So we did get additional state aid for special ed, and we had some staffing vacancies, and that contributed to some lower Fund 27 expenses. So we didn't need to transfer as much from Fund 10 to 27. And then with that, kind of balance that out by increasing our Fund 46 transfer. So that's our long-term capital improvement plan. Increasing that by $200,000. That obviously can be used to down the road indefinitely, and will also earn interest in future years. And so as a result, the total changes of expenses is a reduction of $353,035. So you'll notice that the revenue we reduced by $153,000, and the expenses were reduced by $353,000, right? So we're actually projecting to end the year with a positive balance of $200,000, which could roll over into fund balance. And I've mentioned a couple times we want to get away from short-term borrowing, and one way to do that is increasing the fund balance so that we have more cash during those low points. I did also want to mention our Fund 50, that's our food service fund, is projected to end with a significant positive balance of over $100,000. The federal reimbursement rates were boosted this year, so we did get additional revenue that we weren't expecting. And so that money is separate. It can't be mixed in with Fund 10. But later on, we'll talk about school fees and lunch prices. And one way we can do that is by keeping prices relatively flat for this next year and see how our fund balance changes. So we'll get to that.
So they can go into 46?
Fund 50 has to stay only for food service. But we are buying a significant amount of kitchen equipment on the south end. So this could cover some of that as well, which would then give more flexibility in the referendum for other potential unexpected costs or furniture or other pieces. So,
Sidewalk projects.
yes, yeah, maybe.
Too soon.
Only if you're cooking on them.
So that positive balance right now, and I just want to reiterate, this is projected as of a couple days ago as I finished doing this. As the month of July comes in, we'll have virtually all of our transactions recorded, and then we'll see where we stand by the next board meeting. But essentially we can either roll that positive balance into our fund balance, we could transfer additional money into Fund 46, or we can do a combination of both. And that's the Fund 10 positive balance. But we have until the end of next month to decide what to do. So my plan is to recommend approving these changes. As July goes in, I'll update everything one more time. I don't expect any significant changes, but if there are, I'll bring it back one more time and then kind of ask the board for the opinion on what to do with where we end with a positive balance.
So Fund 50, that include, like I know last year at this time, we were having conversations about chasing people down.
Correct. So we do still have some negative lunch balances or breakfast and lunch balances.
I think last year was like $30,000.
Yes. So it's less than that. I'm still trying to figure everything out as well. Unfortunately, the fund balance can't go to offset those costs. So that has to be accomplished by a transfer from Fund 10 to 50.
Got it. Okay.
If we were going to eventually absolve everybody, otherwise we're still trying to follow up and hope that people pay. So anyway, those are all the changes. If we go to the next slide, we can see the numbers side of things. So I highlighted the three ones that were over 30,000, which were the benefits mainly due to health insurance, the interfund transfer, the fund is Fund 27, and then the open enrollment expenses. So, and then I'll bring this again one more time in July just to finalize where we ended the year.
Remind me, how much money would we need in that fund balance to avoid short-term borrowing?
Like 200,000 is close. And every year expenses go up. So then, I'm thinking 200,000, but maybe next year it's 250. So we're very, very close. And I will also bring a resolution to allow short-term borrowing just to have it in our back pocket in the event that we need to. But we're getting very close to that point. So, looking for a motion. Anybody here?
I move to approve the changes to the 2022-2023 adopted budget.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
All right, employee health insurance. So normally we do this we've typically done this in November maybe. But we've now moved our plan year to start with September 1, going through August. So it's September 1 through August 31st. We are with Humana Health Insurance, who's exiting the health insurance marketplace at the end of 2024. So we do have one last renewal with them, and fortunately it came in favorably for us. It was a 3% decrease. So this is after we had a negative 4% decrease on the last renewal. So, I was very happy for this because I've heard many districts get 10% increases, 15% increases, 20% increases. So it was also attributable to our participation in the wellness program, the Go 365. So we've had a wellness committee that's, done step challenges on a monthly basis. We've done some other activities. And so we've had high participation in that, which is why we got the decrease in the renewal. Otherwise it was going to be flat. One thing that we've discussed in committee and at prior board meetings is the school year full-time employees. So these are employees that work 30 or more hours during the school year. The main category is our paraprofessionals, but also our library aides and a few other one-off positions. So we've talked about moving all of our school year full-time employees if they're on the single insurance plan, they get 90% of the premium covered by the district and they pay the 10%. But if they were to elect the employee plus one or the family coverage, the district only would pay 45% and the employee would have to pay 55%. So we've talked about moving all those employees to the 90-10 breakdown that all the other staff have. And so I did put that projected increase into our budget, which will come down later down the agenda. So the way I have it presented is that all employees would be at the 90%, 10%, but we can obviously keep it as is. This is just what we're recommending, and based on feedback from committee meetings and prior board meetings, we're proposing. And then I did want to mention again, Humana is exiting the health insurance market, so we will need to look for a new carrier for the following plan year. And so even though that's over a year away, that's something that we'll work with our employee benefits consultant to get a move on. Mm-hmm. Though, based on our utilization and the loss ratio, I think we are a favorable, hopefully we get a number of insurance companies to bid, and that we're in a good position to get a good renewal or a initial renewal or initial, I don't know what the term is.
Is there a group trying to scoop up Humana's?
No,
I don't think so.
Not that you're hearing.
It's all going to be dictated by loss ratio.
Yeah.
So if we had a 95 to over 100, yeah. I think the appropriate way would be to plan for, the nuclear situation of 17 plus each year. We got lucky this year with this, especially with Humana exiting with their timeline and strategy. So it worked out nice.
I have a question about the 45, 55, 90, 10. If we moved everyone to 90, 10, how would that affect a 3% decrease?
So I when I budgeted, I built the 3% decrease in, and then I added the projected cost of the increase. When we talk about the preliminary budget for next year, I'll cover that.
You're saying if everybody moved, would that 3% change?
Yes.
So the 3% is actually on the premium amount. Between fiscal years, sometimes we'll have people that maybe had a baby and now they're adding somebody, or maybe they were on their parents' insurance, now they're not. So the overall amount is not actually increasing by 3%. It could be different than that. The premium amount, the amount that we pay per employee by type, is what's
When you
decreasing.
renew the policy, it's set, and then as you add things on through special events, it just adds to that total premium. So
Or it could decrease if
or
they were to-
decrease,
yeah.
if you have members leave too. But yeah, it's the primary rate that's set from the beginning that where the decrease is coming from.
But I think Jack, I think what I always had assumed is if more healthy people took insurance, that 3% maybe is a 5% decrease instead of, is that what you're?
Yeah, I'm thinking that if you have some employees who have the 45, 55, they'd love to have the 90, 10. And would we be able to handle that? Would we be able to do the best that we can for our employees?
And what we did was we surveyed all the employees that would be affected. And I forgot what the data said, but then I used that to project how much additional this would cost. And I was even conservative on that. I think it was a little over $100,000 bump. And I put that into the budget for next.
Because we did look at this through personnel and through finance committees, both.
And I kind of wish now after, because I know the end of the story and it's a good story, but I wish we would have, like, I think what you're at, like, he baked in to make sure it would work. So I kind of wish we would have done the part to let them know, like, all the things we're about to offer. Yeah, because I knew the end of the story, because if I didn't know the end, I'm like,
Yeah, it's like, I have the budget, but the budget is,
at the end.
is based on
yeah,
this and,
yeah. He wouldn't make a recommendation to have that like this if
if it was gonna put us
Yeah.
in a deficit or.
yeah.
We did look at
could
all
jump
those
to the other
numbers.
slides.
I'm operating off old teacher muscles.
I know.
So the graph there in the green shows what the current premiums are in total for the district and employee by individual or by coverage level, and then it also in the blue it shows what the new premiums were, and so you can see those are all lower. And then in the far right it shows the change. So everybody, the district is getting that 3% decrease on the premium, so is the employee. And the employee one seems very small, but the employee one is only 10% of that 3% decrease.
Well, I mean, how many years have we had to increase it? So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's the first time in a while that's going backwards, or opposite direction, so. Yep.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the 2023-2024 employee health insurance as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's can't wait to share that with our employees. and-
Yeah, I think they're gonna,
Yeah, that's big news.
So
a big
this is
step.
the first time that was presented, so, okay, so, yeah, all right.
I mean, the people that we surveyed, maybe there's conversation, but it's never been.
Yeah, well, in the survey, I said the board has been looking into this, we'd like additional data, and so I mean, I guess they had some indication that we were considering it, but.
it's just great that now it's September 1 instead of January,
Yeah.
like all the stars have aligned. It's a really exciting thing.
So in tandem with the health insurance renewal, we've typically reviewed what used to be our HSA, and that we've now made a VIBA contribution. And then the next one will also be the cash in lieu payment, the waiver payment. So we typically do those at the same time. So beginning with the 2023 plan year, we began contributing to a VIBA for each employee. Prior to that, we were doing an HSA contribution. Effectively, they work very similar, but the VIBAs are entirely employer funded and are interest bearing. And then it frees up the employees to still contribute to their HSA up to the contribution limit. So the VIBA contribution for the past plan year, it was a short plan year. It was January 1st through August 31st. We did $2,000 for anybody who was on the single insurance coverage and $4,000 for anybody on the family or employee plus one coverage. And so we're proposing the same amount as usual. Our out-of-pocket max of the deductibles for the insurance is still the same as last year. And the VIBA contributions would occur in 2 equal installments, one in September, so that because people's deductible will reset in September. So we'd like to make sure that people have some money to potentially cover anything early on. And then the second equal installment would be in February. And then we would also prorate these as necessary. So if an employee switched in the mid-year or dropped or left, by paying it in two installments, we don't pay it all up front. So we do a September payment and a February payment. So
I would like to mention again that I am acronym challenged. VIBA?
I think it's a Voluntary Employee Benefit Association.
Thank you.
Any questions at all about that? Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the 2023-2024 VIBA contribution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, next item is the consideration of the waiver of insurance payment, or what we refer to as cash in lieu as well. So employees who choose to waive the health insurance coverage are offered a cash in lieu of participation incentive of $5,000 annually, prorated if necessary. Employees who waive coverage have to show that they have other health insurance coverage. And then last year, we used to, prior to 2023, we were doing strictly full cash payment. But then for the last school year, we did a $4,000 in cash and $1,000 in VEBA, and that benefits us because we don't have to pay FICA on that $1,000, and also benefits the employee because they don't pay FICA on that and don't have to pay taxes, income taxes on that. So we're proposing keeping the overall amount the same, but shifting a little bit more towards the VEBA up to $1,500, so increasing that by $500, and then shifting the cash to the $3,500 amount. And then the cash portion and the VEBA portion would be paid out in 2 installments. The first one would be in December. Traditionally, a lot of people have viewed that cash in lieu incentive payment in December as, holiday spending money. And then the second portion would be paid out in June at the end of the fiscal year. And of course, if somebody were to left or the situation changed, everything would be prorated as we needed. So.
This shouldn't be a surprise to any employees or anything. Like, this is a conversation we've had when we approved the.
Yep, and we'll go over it
First
again
in
during August at
2023,
the in-service as well.
Have a motion?
I move to waive the insurance payment as presented and discussed.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, now a different type of insurance. Our property, liability, auto, crime, and workers' comp policies. So these, our health insurance, we wanted to align with the school year when people start working, September through August. But this type of insurance actually coincides with our fiscal year, which runs July 1st through June 30th. And we typically get the renewal in May or June. I've kind of asked if they could get it to me earlier so that I can present it in May and then use that in the budget. Fortunately, I think we missed it. I got the day after our May board meeting, but so I had it in time to build the budget, but didn't have it in time to bring to you guys last month. So for the 2023-2024 year, we were given a renewal that increased in total by $23,491. It's a 26% increase, and then most of that increase are $20,565 of that $23,000 amount is due to our workers' comp insurance going up, and that's due to a prior year workers' comp claim that was a significant amount. Overall, I was expecting the property insurance to jump up a little bit more. It only went up 6%, so that was very favorable on our end. Besides, if the workers' comp, had stayed flat or whatever, this would be a great story, but that workers' comp number kind of puts a damper on it. I do want to mention, though, that when we started working with R&R last year, they did get our, at that time, they got our renewal for last year to drop down. So we were actually at this amount 2 years ago. So, it's kind of getting back to that level. And then the workers' comp insurance, I think, runs on a 3-year cycle, if I'm correct, Nick. So,
First year and then 3 years after.
So it could be lingering around for a little bit. Hopefully, we don't have any additional claims to increase it, but that amount, I'll be looking into it a little bit more, seeing if we can get that adjusted if possible. But besides that workers' comp amount, I think the renewal was favorable, especially from the property side.
You thought it'd go up because of construction projects?
Well, it will eventually once the work's done, but I think, and Nick might be able to speak to this a little bit, but I think nationwide property insurance is going up.
That's favorable considering it's well into the 20s, 24 to 28 to 30% we've seen. I know my accounts, it's been high, So, and that's mainly due to a lot of the strange weather we've had the last year and a half, and insurance companies have just been getting beat down on property coverage. So not even so much fires and things like that, just roofs,
Weather, yeah.
a lot of roofs,
Yeah.
roof siding,
Yeah.
All right. Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the insurance coverage as discussed and presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, school fees. So in the image on the right, I kind of have the proposed cost, then the cost from last year, and then the change in cost. So hopefully it's easy to read. Just kind of want to go over some of the changes that we're proposing. So for 4K full day and 5K registration fees, you'll notice that that's gone up by $20. And that's because we are now going to include the sleeping mats that we had on the supply list. We're going to be purchasing those in bulk because we can get a better deal by buying, 200 of them. And so hopefully that ends up actually saving families a little bit of money. And additionally, then we'll make sure that we have the right sizes and the right textures and materials that the teachers want. So that's the reason for that increase. In grades 1 through 8, you'll notice we also increased those by $20. The reason we did that is because we actually removed a few fees. We got rid of the Chromebook insurance, and we actually are including it now in the registration fees, since all of our students are grades 1 through 8 are using technology. So for the younger grades 1 through 2, they're using iPads, and so Apple Care is the insurance policy that we purchased. We also have this JAMP software that allows us to do updates on all of them at the same time and make sure that, just helps us monitor the iPad inventory. That's the reason for that increase. And then the grades 3 through 8, they use Chromebooks, and so rather than charge people the Chromebook insurance, we put it into the registration fee. So similar to the bank accounts consolidation, hopefully, hopefully it makes things simpler on our end with fee collection and things of that nature. Additionally, we did increase our club and sport fees by $5. We do have to pay coaches and activity directors. We do have to pay for referees and things like that, and all that is going up as well. So obviously we don't want to, increase it too much, but this is literally just kind of an inflationary increase. And then we did, in the prior years, we had a cap of $150 per family for all, if the total of all their sports and clubs was capped at $150. So this year we did bump that cap just a little bit since those $5 increases came in. And then the big thing is the breakfast and lunch prices. We are proposing no change in meal prices, even though the cost of food is going up and our renewal with Arbor went up a little bit, the price that we're paying per meal. Since we'll have over $200,000 in fund balance. One way that DPI, recommends that you use the fund balance in addition to buying equipment for your kitchen is to kind of make meals more affordable, and you can do that by keeping the price steady. Obviously, I don't foresee that being able to do that forever, but while we have a significant fund balance, we can keep prices stable and then increase them next year based on how we finish this year. I do want to note, though, that that's based on the current federal reimbursement rate. If for whatever reason the federal reimbursement rate we don't find that out until July, mid or end of July. If they were to somehow decrease the reimbursement rate, we might have to revisit this in July or August, because I'm not factoring in a decrease. But just wanted to cover those fees, and if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Move to approve the 2023-2024 school fees as presented and discussed.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
All
I
right.
like it. I feel like it's better than getting nickel and dimed. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
buy the insurance, dude. Like, go buy
Yeah.
these things. Just put it all in one.
Yep. The next item is the 2023-2024 preliminary budget. The official budget or the original budget isn't adopted until October, once our third Friday student count and a few other things are finalized. But the preliminary budget to me is like kind of a guideline, or gives me a sense of where we're going. Gives you a sense of where we're going. And so in your board attachments, you would have gotten the full document that goes into a lot more detail. Similar to the budget changes, I just want to do a high-level summary kind of on the revenue expense side and cover some other important pieces. And then obviously this is just a preliminary budget, so over the course of the summer, we'll have staffing changes. We might hire new staff, some staff might leave, we might add a class, we might lose a class. Our student enrollment might increase a little bit, might decrease a little bit. So obviously, you know, we'll be revisiting this in the fall again, but for the time being, this will kind of be the guide for how we spend our money. So just doing a quick high-level summary, our Fund 10 revenues, we're projecting to be at $15,705,000. So that's a 2.95% increase off of last year's original budget, which we just amended earlier. So it's actually a greater increase off of the amended budget that we just approved the changes for. On the Fund 10 side, on the expense side, because I always try to get to a balanced budget, you'll notice it's the exact same amount. Obviously, I think there was probably like $15,000, $20,000 off, so then I increased a few supply accounts just to make sure it's balanced. But we're projecting our fund balance then to be at 21%, and currently it's at 20%. So, you know, like I said, we're very close to getting to that point where we don't have to short-term borrow. The other two big high-level points I wanted to point out were the school-level tax levy. We're projecting that to be $7,348,486, which is actually a slight decrease of 1.18%. The reason is the state aid amount has increased. So the state budget is calling for additional dollars in total. So obviously that then decreases the amount on the property tax side. And so with that, I don't have any current defeasance built in or anything, but with that, the mill rate then is projected to be at $6.04, which would be a slight decrease from the $6.11 it's currently at. So I think that's all very positive news. And now we'll go into a little more detail on how the state budget played out. So on the revenue side, revenue limits is the combination of state aid and property taxes that a district can receive. So the big topic that was probably discussed was how much the increase in the revenue limit per student or per member was going to be. And we were hoping for 350, I think the original budget proposed 350 in the first year and 650 in the second year. But they actually kept it at 350 in both years. So obviously it wasn't quite what we were hoping. But the bigger story for us, and I think maybe less than 20% of districts in the state, is that we were a low revenue district. You probably heard me mention that a few times. We were at the base amount, the 10,000, which is the lowest you could be. They actually increased that base from 10,000 to 11,000. So while most 70% or 75% districts got the $350 per member increase, we actually got a $1,000 per member increase. And you would think that's a lot, but then we also lost, because our enrollment had taken a dip during the pandemic. We were getting these special exemptions called the declining enrollment exemption and the hold harmless exemption. But because our enrollment has jumped back to kind of level again or slightly increasing, we lost those exemptions, so that kind of ate into that $1,000. So overall, it was a positive thing. And we benefited from that low revenue ceiling being increased. And that also helps us close that gap between us and then all the other districts in the state that were at higher amounts. So that was a big win for us on that side. Special ed, categorical aid, the governor had proposed increasing the reimbursement rate from currently at 30%, and he asked for 45% and then 60%. And I think the final amount is 33%. So obviously it's not the 45% we were hoping for, but it's still more than we got this year. So that's another positive, which then reduces our transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 27, so frees up more money in general operations. And then federal ESSER dollars, because we used about $200,000 less this year, that means we have that money available for next year. We do have some additional one-time costs, such as the health insurance will be, I guess that'll be a one-time bump and then an ongoing cost.
Adjust the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
But later on, we'll talk about cameras and kind of built that into the budget as well. And so even though the ESSER dollars won't be used for those cameras, essentially it's a one-time cost that will fall off at the same time the ESSER dollars do. So on the revenue side, we do have additional ESSER dollars. We have more ESSER dollars than I was originally planning on because we claimed less this year. On the expense side, CPI as calculated by work is 8% for this upcoming fiscal year. Obviously, 8% is a lot because especially it snowballs and builds on in future years, and without any certainty in what the revenue increases are going to be. I guess we do know the following year's revenue increase is going to be $350, which is I think about 2%, a 2% increase. So just knowing that, I did budget a 4% increase for increases in salary. I know that's obviously not the 8%, but I think it's very close to being in line with districts around the area. And when we do a survey of all the school districts in the state, I think we get close to 300 districts responding. And, I think it was right around 4.2% is where the average in the state fell this year.
Total.
Total, yeah.
Right, like total.
Yep. And then on the benefit side, I did plug in our 3% decrease in premiums. But then I also added the additional additional bump this first year for bringing those school year full-time employees from the 45-55 to the 90-10. So that's in there as well. On the purchase services, so that's mostly our contracts, and then supplies, I did add any known increases in contracts that I knew at this time, as well as increasing everything else by 4% across the board, which ties somewhat to what inflation is currently at the moment. And then I also did include the bus cameras, as I mentioned. And then on additional, the other big part of it is our insurance, property, liability, workers' comp. I did put in the new renewal amounts as well. So those are kind of the high revenue and expense levels. I did want to reiterate that this is just a preliminary budget, so it's, while it's an important piece, it's not the end product. So some of the important dates that are coming up that pertain to the budget are, one, all the ongoing staffing and district need changes that occur over the summer. So as we work with our new principal, Ben, and our administrative team and the board to discuss things that come up over the summer, those are things we'll have to account for when we pass the budget in October. Additionally, we have the third Friday count, which is September 15th this year. On October 1st, the Department of Revenue certifies the property values. So that's used to determine the state aid, which is certified on October 15th. And then at our budget hearing and annual meeting, I'll present the budget on October 24th, and the board would then adopt the budget in October. So I know it's a lot of information. I covered just kind of the high points, but then as more information comes in, we'll update you and probably do an update later in the summer, and then as we get into budget season, we'll talk more. Any questions on it?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was very happy on
Yeah.
the revenue side, the low revenue thing. Saved the day, because if we had only gotten the 350, it'd be a whole different
Tough
conversation.
decisions to make. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve the 2023-2024 preliminary budget as presented and discussed.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so this is now, we're shifting to like, what is that savings doing for our kids? So this one and the next, I think two are, I'm looking forward to seeing some positive outcomes. So our paper subscription is up for renewal. I have on there just some statistics, and it's in your board packet, some other information. The Live Help and Review Center, it's the same cost, the renewal, it's the same cost for all of these things, but the paper reading, missions, exploration, and planning, those are new, and they weren't added costs, that just throughout the year, they were starting to roll them out. One of the things that during our finance meeting, we had talked about, like, we have these subscriptions and we're doing an audit of what we want to keep and what we want to eliminate. Some of these things, our families are still getting to know and learn, and so are our teachers. And already we're seeing, you have some feedback from kids, but I can look regularly to see the feedback kids are making after they have these sessions. One of the things I'm going to ask the principal and Patty is to help the teachers start to see, like, part of that rubric when kids are submitting papers, because that's something for essay writing, having the kids go through the practice of submitting it first to their writing center so that they can, it helps offset some of the work the teachers are having to do, and they can work closer with kids. But paper reading has got a fluency piece in, and we're finding that that's some of the things our teachers really want an intervention in. Paper reading will listen to the reading, gives feedback quickly to the student, and then it also gives feedback to the teacher. Paper missions, it's like math fact fluency. So they add, subtract, multiply, divide. We're finding we'd have a lack of intervention around specifically of those basic math skills. This has that in there now. We can see, and I know a couple of the teachers that do the math missions. They're paper certified teachers already at the middle school level. So I know that they're using these, but it's for a first year, I'm happy with the amount that it has been used. If you can see that the number of live sessions that we've had, 434 hours for kids. And from what I'm finding, there's a couple of high school kids that have snuck in papers to get feedback on. The career exploration and the academic planning, we have Zello already for our career planning. I believe that's how you say it, it's XELLO. But they have one, and that's for our middle school, but they also have just career activities for grades 3 through 8 as well. And that will be something that if our primary teachers or our young intermediate teachers are interested, that they can explore as well. So the paper renewal is continuing. I would like us to continue using it based upon the fact that it's being accessed and used quite a bit. It is a cost, but we've put that in there in the budget already, and I'd like just to get another year of data to see if it's worth continuing, now that there are a couple of interventions that are already built into this that we were going to explore outside anyway.
So do you see teachers like saying to their kids like, hey, today we're gonna all submit your essays to like get them in that habit?
Yeah. I would say that the place I saw it most was in the middle school. Ryan was pretty intentional about like checking in to see when it was happening. And then I started to also see, like Patty had one of the PDs for the younger teachers to see how it can be used in younger grades. But that's where I think having a rubric for teachers and kids to know, like, first submission goes here, because what they do is they'll chalk it up and they'll chalk up the paper, give feedback on what it looks like. Doesn't rewrite it, the kids get to rewrite, but it's a full review of a submission, so.
Now, just to kind of, students can use this on campus and off campus, is that correct? Perhaps this upcoming year, I don't know how well we have promoted this to the parent use, right? Because often I hear parents, I can't, especially with the older students, I feel to get some better data during orientation or whatever the case might be, this might be a little bit more of a focal point, just to get some more useful data out of it. Because I think probably a lot of the time on there, which is great, is probably, instructional time in classroom, checking it out, doing it possibly, right? So just having some more true data to that.
Like the PM sessions.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say too, is like how much, in that
Yep.
PM area, so.
Yeah, and it's not as high certainly in the PM area, so that could be a really good and I love, to your point, after you said that, talk to Patty, and she's already talked to the assistant director for like ed tech, having a parent university where we start to really pump this out so people know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great suggestion. For sure. Yeah.
Do we know of those 1,869, how many, do we know unique users?
I could tell you, I don't know if it's in your packet. I look at the thing because I like to read what the kids say. It's fascinating to me because it's somewhere we're like, just give me the answer.
Right.
And they're, no, we're not going to. But the dashboard's pretty comprehensive. Yeah. And I will be pushing that dashboard over to the principal so he can help push the access and usage of it too. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Is this gonna be ESSER funds again, do you think? Yeah. Can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve the paper tutoring resource subscription at $42,250 for the 23-24 school year.
So moved. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. So this is one of the first, this one is one of the technology ones that we're approving. I know that there were a couple other solutions that we approved in September and August. Are there things that we're not bringing back then? Or is this just the first of some?
This is the first of some, but I don't believe we might not be bringing back Ripples.
Okay.
I don't remember.
And then the other ones, if they were under the $20,000 threshold, I don't think we put them on the agenda.
Oh, maybe that's why. Okay.
But if they were, then obviously this one was over that amount, so we brought it to you guys. I think, I don't know if last year when you first started, you brought them all.
I think we did.
I think, yeah, so they'll.
Just so you could get to know
So if
them.
they're under the threshold, I don't think we put it on the agenda for this year.
All right.
And Read Live, we're reducing the subscriptions by half.
Which one?
Read Live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this next, I'm really excited. So next month, you're going to get an update. I'm meeting with I have a retreat with our leadership team, and we're gonna do a pretty big deep dive into our strategic plan, and you're gonna get an update. The cadence that I'm gonna do updates for the strategic plan are, Marquez and I just talked earlier, we found out they're gonna coincide on July. It won't be long, but my cabinet will be talking through, am I going way too far backward? Some of the exciting things that we're doing and the big topics that came up in that strategic plan, looking at our master schedule, talking to kids to see what type of electives they wanted. You saw a few months ago, kids bringing in their robotics and the electronics. So I'm excited about what Patty has been working on to make sure that our elective area, we really are, our strategic plan's not just living on a shelf, we're living and breathing it already, and next month you'll get to see it, but this is a step in that direction, so go ahead.
Well, we're like
Oh,
connected because you just said everything that I.
oh shoot, I'm sorry.
So obviously with strategic planning, this is what we talked about, was bringing in STEM opportunities, expanding our electives. And so we wanted to find the best way to do that and to get it rolling as soon as possible, because growing your own program is really time consuming and expensive. So Jennifer Griffith, who's our new Assistant Director of Innovation and Ed Tech, and I met with Project Lead the Way and looked at some opportunities. So initially we jumped right to robotics because that's what we talked about initially. It's not cheap to get going for everybody all at once. So what we determined with the team was the best rollout for this and the best way to make sure that we're expanding this not just to one single course, but many STEM opportunities for kids, is to start with a course called Design and Modeling. And that it kind of builds foundation for some of the STEM thinking and work. And so all of our middle school students would have the opportunity next year to participate in that as an elective. And then the following year, so we would divide it into two parts. It's not designed that way, but it can certainly work that way. And then, so the following year, 6th grade, would still do part 1, then 7th grade would do part 2, and then we would bring in robotics for our 8th graders. That also gives us a year to work on finding some grant opportunities to fund the robotics portion. And then in the 3rd year, there are other modules that we could bring in. If we wanted to stay on the engineering track, we could choose computer science track. There's a biomedical sciences track, so we could pull in some other opportunities there. Project Lead the Way also has an elementary program. It is 4K through 5th grade, which is awesome. We would be starting next year looking at just 4th and 5th grade, starting with a module or two as part of their science curriculum. So part of why I'm looking at this as a 3-year plan is because we applied for and were awarded grants through Project Lead the Way, which is very exciting. So we got one for middle school that would allow us to, we would get 2 years of the participation fee paid, which was $950 a year. So that's a good savings. And then 6 teacher training registrations. So that's up to $7,200 for that grant. And then for the elementary portion, it's 2 years of participation fees and 12 teacher training registrations, so $6,000. Good savings for the district, so I'm excited for that. And part of the expectation is that each year you add another module, which works out great for us because that's what we would want to do. So,
Question.
yes.
I notice in middle school electives, part 1, design and modeling, 6th through 8th grade, starting them all with a basic understanding.
Yes.
Next year, 6th grade would again be modeling and design, it's a brand new class. Part 2 in 7th grade, 8th grade automation and robotics. Is that like a readiness thing? You just have to be ready to jump in and skip the second?
So no, part of it is really about making sure we have the appropriate time to do the training for the teacher and to have the funding for getting all the equipment we would need for robotics. So they would not necessarily need to complete that entire design and modeling in order to do the automation and robotics.
Got it.
They're two separate
Thank you.
pieces. Yep. Any other questions?
The other thing I just want to throw out that the high school is also Project Lead the Way. So if we find a track, it could be eventually where kids start 4K and go through 12th grade. And so like that partner, and that's big to me. It's important to me that we find ways to link us to the high school. And I feel like we're more and more doing that. So, but we don't have to be the same, whatever path they have, but there may be kids and a good chunk of kids that say that that's what we want. And we'll listen to
Families
students.
that are familiar with
Yeah.
the Project Lead the Way, I'll call it brand,
Yeah,
rigor, right? Like,
yeah.
I think it's a great thing. And to have it at the high school and here, people are familiar with it. They're less apprehensive to sign up for a class.
And this is part of an elective is part of the curriculum, so in school, or is it an after school?
No,
In
it's
school.
part of their
Oh, okay.
in-school opportunity, so it's something that they'd be able to choose. Some kids want to do art, or maybe they want to do STEM one semester, so.
And it would be existing teachers that we have?
Yeah.
Sign
Yes.
up to train for it and everything? That's
Yes.
great. I mean, a lot of happy people about this.
Yes.
Are we still planning to do anything with Gateway and the Fab Lab? I know we've talked about that at a previous meeting.
I don't
Or there was a
know,
presentation.
I know that, we've done a lot of partnership, we're doing a community event at some point with the Gateway, the Fab Lab, it's just still really expensive.
Right.
Yeah, so, but I still have their contact. What we're thinking we might do in the interim is work with Nicole Paul to see if we can do like an evening where they bring their equipment and we do something as a, yeah. So we don't lose that connection with them.
Because what they're doing there, like you said, is a very expensive project. Even though they got some outside funding, but still, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Something just came up, the word art was introduced as a choice or this. And being a former music teacher, I have to question, is this going to be pulling kids from the performing arts?
I think it just makes sure that all kids have something that they're interested in and can try different things. There's still going to be blocks where kids who are doing choir or band have that opportunity. And then during the other block, they'll be able to take things like STEM or Spanish.
Okay, thank you.
Could I have a motion, please?
Yeah, I move to approve the adoption and implementation of Project Lead the Way modules for the 2023-2026 school years.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.
Okay.
Last item on the list. So I think we've been talking about this for several months now. I think going back to March. But bus transportation has been a topic on the behavior side, on the financial side. And so in response to our prior transportation discussions, we did issue a survey out in early May. I think at the last board meeting, we did present the outcome of that survey, but we did receive 104 responses, representing 171 students. And the responses to the questions, the only one that really saw a significant approval rating or people that supported it was question 1 about adding new camera equipment on the buses. So our current camera equipment is a single camera at the front. There's no audio. Oftentimes you can't, unless something occurred right at the front of the bus, you really can't see what happened. It's mostly aimed at who's coming on, who's coming off, and providing a view of anything that's happening near the driver. But the proposed additional new camera and audio system would provide audio and then would have 3 additional cameras spread out throughout the bus so that you can basically see throughout the entire bus and also hear what's going on. We did get a number of quotes and they came in with a one-time cost of $42,000. And then additionally, there is an ongoing annual cost for the software subscription for this. $4,000. So that was the one that, had the most support. And then, as I've mentioned before, I did, in preparation for whatever decision was made, I did put this into our budget as well. So this is already fitting within the scope of the budget. But we did want to bring it forward to the board. And, our recommendation would be to move forward with that new camera equipment. We did talk to Mr. Holzem as well, the new principal coming on board, and I think anytime we can have better view, audio of things, hopefully we can have some more accountability on student behaviors. So that's one aspect of it, and I don't know if you like to add anything, Dr. King, but.
No, so we were asked to make a recommendation. I would say, I don't think this is gonna be the only thing that fixes the problems. I do think there is a strategy in place that Ben will be a part of presenting some of that strategy from our strategic plan next month in July. He's already been digging into our discipline data, our referral data, maybe talking to have staff on the buses if we see some reoccurring things happening. So I think this will be a part of it. I don't want people to think that I think this is the answer, because I think it will help us get there. But I don't think this will be the one thing that makes and changes the world. But having talked to Marquez, and I had a pretty long discussion about this, that we would be paying it solely the district, so they would become our cameras. Let's say you do go to First Student or your own busing, it's just paid by the district, so they would be ours. So we're not sharing, like Bristol and Central would have access to the cameras, because we're not going to not give them access. They'd have access.
So that was going to be my question about this, because inherently there's going to be an issue that they're going to ask us for, and I'm just being fiscal representative of the school district.
And they wouldn't ask us, they would
They'd
ask
ask the
First Student,
Dousman.
Dousman, sorry, Dousman.
But my whole point to that, to finish my point,
Yeah, please.
they're going to get the benefit of this too inherently. So that being said, I don't want to sound like I'd be closed off to this, because the base in which we spend the money on the district, that we go to, referendums and ask our community to spend money fiscally, I think it'd be enticing for us to go to the districts that utilize those same busing services and ask if they would want access for and then be a part of this portion of this cost.
And I've done that.
In their response, then I think we need to set a policy on this that would represent, and I know that sounds a little bit narrow, but if we're
I
fronting.
don't think it's narrow at all.
I think that this is our equipment and utilization for our students.
Are there other situations that we're not aware of where we receive benefit from partnerships with Bristol or Central? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd hate to be like,
We're typically the fiscal agent
no,
on
I know.
everything, right?
I would just be I'd hate to be the one to say like, sorry Bristol, sorry Central, you have no access to this, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, sorry Salem, you don't have access to something that we're not even aware of.
And I'm not trying to foster relationships
I know
similar to that. This is due response from our parents, right? And we're responding to that criticism or suggestion to do something about it. And I'm just really thinking, I know that's a very narrow thought process in that. However, we are fronting literally all the cost for it.
Are they keeping the old cameras on the bus too?
So that they would replace it with, instead of the one, they'd have the 4. So then if Bristol were to say, hey, can we see the footage? They would, maybe they could just share the front one and turn off the audio. I don't know.
Camera one with no.
But I don't think we would, how would they delineate between, because we would have a front one too. Like, we're not going to put the garbage.
Our own equipment. They'd still have their old equipment on there, I'm sure,
That's
too.
what I'm saying. Can they keep?
Well, I don't think their original plan was to have, they would replace it. But I guess they could probably keep just the one old camera. I don't know what the electrical part is on the
again,
bus.
No, I agree.
I like and respect all the school districts in the area, it's
Oh,
just,
yeah.
when we're fronting the cost, I would think that their idea of, hey, would you want to chip on something that's, the idea would be.
Seems logical,
There would be
right?
something like, sure, how about this, we'll split
Even if
X
it's-
amount with you.
yeah, right.
The fact that it was just a hard no,
Well, and I apologize, 'cause I don't want to do that to John or Jack. So John, they're doing the Central's doing a dive into transportation to get their own busing. So they're doing a long-term project right now. So that I don't think this makes sense to their long-term plan. So it was a quick no, but it was, I think, and I knew the background that they've been doing some research to get their own buses.
Well, and if anything, for the subscription, you know, would say we bear the cost of putting in there because it's something that we needed to do. But if they wanted, you know, part of the subscription annually, they could review whether or not they're going to put their, you know, and split that cost, you know, and how many different thirds or quarters or whatever the case is. And every year you just review that. And if they pull out, then that's fine. Then we have to pay more, whoever's, you know what I'm saying? So at least there's got to be some sort of bite into it. I'm just saying, because this is an investment that we're pulling from something else that we could be putting.
Yeah, and maybe this could be a discussion between you and the superintendents and the other two districts to get some feedback versus having a policy at this point.
Telling the board.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm just saying in the future that this could
Right, no,
turn
I
into
agree.
being some sort of policy or something we got to discuss a little further.
And I don't, want you- I did talk with them, so, and the other, like, Bristol, they just failed a referendum, so, and they don't have the same concerns that we're seeing. So I didn't mean to make it sound like they just like, who cares what's happening on the buses, or, but I think their priorities are just, I don't think, they've had to prioritize other things, so.
Well, I think to Nick's point, maybe there needs to be just some sort of policy just
Just a
about
guideline.
what if every week they're requesting, oh, we need to see footage, we need to see footage.
And we would
Right.
never see it, that's all Dousman.
Right, I understand, but I think. to
Like, how
Nick's
much are they
point,
using the-
It's like.
But we would probably have to give Dousman permission.
Right.
Because we're fronting, I mean, it's our technology in their buses. I would think that we'd have to give them the okay to use it for someone else's.
Right,
bus.
and are we going to ask the bus company to report back to us how many times the other districts are requesting footage?
Yeah, again, there's stuff we got to look into. We don't have to answer all the questions
I'm
tonight.
just saying.
No, I think you're, but I don't know if we should table, well, so the reason we brought this on now is because in order for it to be ready by August, it needs to be done now. So if there's not a rush for August and we want to keep talking about this, we can.
I say regardless, we're doing this probably,
We can do
right?
both at the
So,
same
but
time.
Okay.
once it's implemented, I think we need to have a discussion about how our neighboring school districts, and again, that's no push against anyone else
No,
by
yeah.
any means,
Yeah.
right? But I think that we've done really well holistically here and through everything we've done to put ourselves in a good financial status right now, that we owe it to our taxpayers to a degree that we maintain that holistic thought process through this too. You know, so they're asking us to spend money on something that's gonna cost some money, right? And then how we maintain that, I think is just, it's the responsible thing that me as a board member, I think, that's how I view it, I guess, I don't know. but
I
think
mean,
we
I
all
think
do,
you can
yeah.
move forward and then.
Yeah,
implement,
totally.
Figure out.
Regardless if no one wants to pay for anything, right? Like, we're still doing this, I think, right? I think this is, you know, a quarter of the year
Let's
discussed.
leave it there. That's a
Yeah.
good place to leave it.
Are there things that we need to include in the student handbook about like this information may be used for discipline action?
Yeah, I think so, because it's not, since, well,
Now you
once we
just
have
sounds?
policy, yeah, once we have, that policy that we had on audio, if that goes through, then all of that needs to be communicated, kids, that now we can actually hear what you're saying and see much better, not just the first kid in the first row.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe what we'll do, like, when we look at this policy, and I'll let you guys do your motion, but to your point, I've never been in a space where I shared a bus with other districts, so this is a whole new world
Sure,
for me, or
totally.
anything in general like this. So I don't know what I mean, I've shared staff with other districts, but not,
I think it's maybe
A
more
thing.
just permissions and expectations
Yeah.
about the use of the equipment.
Yeah.
Really.
yeah.
Just trying to figure that out with the.
But maybe there's language that we can find, if we can find another district that do something like this, that we
Because
can.
obviously if there is something super urgent,
Yeah.
it's not like.
Sure.
I don't think we would say like, oh, sorry, Jack.
Sorry, Jack.
Right, but
But
to
if it's
Nick's
a, hey,
point, if
parent A
we're-
complained that
All the
student B was doing this, well,
Then it's like,
you could subscribe to our annual fee of $2,040 a year. And then you can be granted that access.
It is kind of a weird thing because we don't own the buses either, so I'd have to look at our contract, and if there's like, oh, you'll be giving access to a single camera, because it's their bus that they're putting the equipment on, they might have to give them, like, promise to give them a single camera. I have to look at the contract. I don't know what their,
But their current cameras don't work anyways, so. I mean, you know, I mean, that's, you're just
like you're looking through a
giving a
fishbowl.
whole bunch of the same, I'd say at that point, right?
Could, I'm just gonna throw a wrench in this.
Oh, great.
Could Dousman, would they buy it and lease it? And say if we're the only school right now that is interested in leasing it, we would pay like full amount, but then if other schools wanna, so then they own it.
Well, that's what we were talking about, like, why can't Dousman just do this? And he's like, well, then they would just
they'll
raise all of
they'll
our
charge
charges.
you and we'll end up paying
Oh,
more.
they'll upcharge it, okay,
I mean,
yeah.
This is like the last thing on their paper trail probably that they're worried about, I would say. And just through the years of dealing with Dousman and Dish, everything, I would say, yeah. I don't
I'd
know.
like to make a motion.
Can I please
He
have a
wants to
motion?
get out.
I had to stand up because my knee was starting to hurt. We've been here a while.
Shoot, we
Been a
have.
while.
Move to approve the installation of new cameras and audio equipment on our buses.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, no committee, we discussed the policy and community relations meeting. And then, so our July meetings, we've got the board training at 5:30. We'll send, or Diane will probably send a menu with what you want for dinner that day, and then 7 o'clock is our next board meeting.
Thank you so much. I adjourn this meeting at 8:56 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See you, TV land.